Hi everybody, and welcome back to our little yoga practice for sexual health. Today is seated hip openers for sexual health. And we just did a little warm up, and now we're on our next segment. Wendy, Caitlin.
Hello.
We were having a little conversation about all the really good reasons to do this pose, which is probably one of the most classic poses we're about to do this. Can you talk about the pose and why it's so classic? And
so we're going to do Baddha Konasana. And
Baddha Konasana.
Yes, bound angle pose. So we're going to be opening the hips. We're going to be really focusing on softening the belly and inviting breath and awareness down into the base of the pelvis.
And is this one situation where we're not actually pulling the pelvic floor up?
Yes.
So this is exceptional that we're not actually thinking on the exhale of pulling up and back with the pelvic floor.
That's, really, really important. That's fundamental to this pose. And it's often really hard for a lot of people to soften the belly.
Let go.
And I think that's a social thing in terms of kind of letting it all hang out, really. But that's how we get the benefits, the physiological benefits in this pose, is to let it soften, let it hang, and really breathe. And we're going to do some work for the bladder here to stimulate just some healthy nourishment to the bladder.
So this is, and this is also different depending on your own flexibility, right?
Right. So notice Wendy's up on a pillow, I'm up on a blanket. You can be right down on the floor. But what we're going to really look for is the shoulders on top of the hips and not a position where the pelvis is scooping under. Right?
So I want to be, so that means maybe my feet are further out.
Yeah, so we also want to move the feet out so that the knees can be not way up.
So actually this is really important, because when you think of doing it, you want to, of course, bring your feet in as close as you can. But if you can't maintain your back when you're doing that, then that's not the yoga for you.
Right.
So that's the yoga for her.
Right.
But my yoga is, I'm like way more out here.
I love that. I love the way you say it, my yoga and your yoga, because it's exactly right.
But so here I can hold myself up. But if I try to come here to look more like Caitlin, I can't. I roll back.
We're compromising the whole pose. Yeah.
So
we got to structurally really be rooted in the sitting bones.
Right, so just think about what your pose is. And because actually just finding your pose, just sitting here, you realize what it is that there is to let go of, because there's so much hip flexor to let go of here.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to let go of hip flexor here because we are contracting the hip flexor. That's one place we're not stretching in this pose. But what we are wanting to do is focus on rooting down and holding the feet or the ankles, or some people hold the toes, just getting some kind of grip. And then little bit of lift through the upper breastbone, a little bit of length through the spine. And then let's focus on that softening, that unwinding of the belly. So let it hang, let it go. And then from here, begin to flutter the knees. And this is the piece for the bladder. So if you close your eyes, maybe sometimes you can get that sensation, that awareness of, where is my bladder? I was looking at some really cool images called 3dvulva.com. Don't know if you've ever seen that.
Wow.
But you can see the position of the pubic bone and the bladder and the uterus and the way that they're all stacked. And it's amazing the pressure that the bladder gets from the uterus, especially for a pregnant woman.
Really? And so in doing this pose, maybe you could point on yourself where people might have that sensation for their bladder.
Sure. So for me, it's going to be pubic bone, about an inch or two above the pubic bone. And kind of in.
Oh yeah, and actually, just sort of you doing that and me sort of finding that place, you might want to, even while you're doing this with us, just put your hand here.
Just to get a little proprioception is often really helpful.
Yeah, and you can actually feel that spot that actually is getting stimulated just by this like tiny little flutter of your hips.
So this is really great if you have kind of chronic urinary tract infections, super
Which
common.
is kind of a menopausal problem, just by the way.
And
who would have
kind of
guessed?
coming into it too. I think a lot of women experience it on the earlier side.
And sometimes just sex can actually create that problem for some people. So you always have to pee after you have sex. I just feel like I need to say that, but but if
Clear it out.
But if you, if you are prone to those kind of infections, then this is a good way to just stay in touch with your bladder, right?
Yeah,
and your urinary tract. Okay.
So there we go.
So coming out.
And we may want a little counter pose.
Yeah,
and
I
a
think
counter
we do,
pose that I
actually.
like to do here is lying down, and maybe you can join me. We'll just go on an angle, but walking the feet out and letting the knees fall in.
Right, because that's going to relax your hip flexors then, right?
Yeah, and you can even do what I call the windshield wiper, where you let one knee fall in and then the other.
Yeah, this feels really nice afterwards.
Yeah, and like I said, this series, those two poses together, really lovely kind of self-care if you're menstruating and experiencing cramps.
Uh-huh. And it's just another way, I feel like it's just another way to feel yourself, to learn what it feels like to live in your own body. And I just feel like everything we can do that kind of teaches us how to, proprioception, our own feelings of what it is to live in our body is really the thing we need to do more of. So, okay, so there you go. That's the second in the seated hip openers for sexual health. So join us again for the next one, and don't forget to tell your friends and like us and keep watching. We'll be right back.